can you see this person's perspective, but can you see beyond this barrier that is in front of you right now? And we do get to that place of gratitude and actually appreciation. Now, it takes us refusing to stay in a victim mindset in order to do that.
Hello, everybody. Spring is springing everywhere. Thank you, Teri Pugh, for being here.
Thank you. How are you today?
You know, it's sunny. It's beautiful. The daffodils are here. Once I hear it's the daffodils and the robins, I'm happy.
There you go.
Ain't everybody happy, though?
Well, that ain't our circus or our monkeys, but let's talk about it.
Well, my deal is not something. Now, people get all into the diving into the psychobabble of I almost said the S word.
Shit?
I would have. Yes. I'm not going to say that now. I only use that when I'm off the air to punctuate sentences.
I read a study the other day that said that cursing actually helps relieve your body of stress. So I've just been on it.
Well, I should be stress-free. I just don't do it on the air. But man, I let him fly when I'm off the air. Anyway, I used to have a book, and it was called 10 Ways to Deal with Difficult Personalities or Difficult People. And I think we've all forgotten that, and I think sometimes we don't know if we are the difficult person, which could be, that could be it, and I'm not talking about people who you can run away from, people you can get away from. I'm talking about if you literally are in a work situation or in a situation where you need to be able to get along enough to get work done or a project done. Sometimes people are in volunteer organizations together, and sometimes personalities just don't mix. I've had those, and I'm not even bringing up politics. That's a whole other page of what we can talk about, but it's really not even that. How do you instruct people who we've lost the ability to communicate anymore?
Well, we haven't really lost it. We've just lost interest in it. We haven't lost the ability to communicate unless you just never had the ability. But now everybody seems to have their pulse on the trigger, and they're just waiting for someone to say something so that they can rebuttal or go around, make it into an argument, that's not everyone, but there's a large part of the population out there that's just seething to not understand, but just to go for the jugular. And that happens in work environments. There's someone you don't get along with. I've had people, tell me, I don't get along with them. They don't get along with me. Can't stand them. They can't stand me. We just ignore each other. And I'm like, have you ever asked what the problem is? I've worked with people before that they've worked with people who remind them of someone who has been a trigger for them in their past. And so being able just to say, let me get clear and be present now with this. And, where's this going for me? Where do I want this to go? Not everybody's willing to do that because they're triggered and they can't see past it.
Boy, I hadn't even thought about that. That's why you do what you do. And I ask the questions because I never, ever thought about sometimes you don't get along with someone because they so remind you of someone in your past who's been difficult. Wow.
And it doesn't have to be a facial thing. It can be whatever, the tidiness of their office, or how they chew their sandwich, or what their hair looks like. It can be something very subtle, but something that is just enough that makes your neck hair kind of pulsate, and you're like, well, I don't like that person. And it's like,
you're right.
I don't know that person.
Oh, I never, ever thought about that. Michelle joins us and says amen to that. Elizabeth says, ooh, girl, I got one of those. And she adds, I try hard to continue to be kind and professional. And I got a coworker I scream with, and then we let it go. That's wild. I mean, I had a screaming coworker years ago that would just have these hissy fits and then be just fine. And then go, "Hey, you want to go to lunch?" And I'm like, "No, no, I don't. You yelled at me, and it's not any fun anymore. And I don't want to go hang with you on
Yeah.
my off time, you know."
Yeah.
And um, and we're covered with so many buzzwords these days. Um, and the political arena has brought in new enemies in situations, in work situations, and I always think politics needs to stay out of the office. Politics needs to stay out of a lot of stuff. I love the Dolly Parton way of doing things. Is go, none of your business.
Right.
um, but it seems to be and that climate is now it's so heated that some can't see past it, whether they're work or family or whatever. And oh yeah, 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 yeah. I just I'm trying in my life right now, and Teri, you can tell me whether I might just be sticking my head in the sand. I'm trying to realize what I can change and what I can do things about. And then if I can't change it and it's not my thing to change, letting it go. And that's what I've learned in a lot of situations. And sometimes, and that's what I have to do with people that I find myself in social or work situations. If I didn't start it, I sure can't fix it. I'm powerless. And I think I'm learning in my 60s the things I'm powerless over. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think that we always have an opportunity to continue to evolve and grow. And so when someone that you work with creates a challenge, it doesn't mean that you have to just placate them and continue being nice until you win them over. It's not about winning them over at all. It's about knowing your boundaries, knowing where you stand, knowing what you will tolerate and what you won't tolerate. And knowing that they don't have to agree with you and you don't have to agree with them, but you also don't have to be assholes to each other.
Right.
That's
Elizabeth saying, "Oh, I don't scream at that coworker. I scream with another woman who feels the same way I do. We let it out safely when we can let it go." Oh, I love that. Well, EB, I know you're not screaming at anybody. We all know that. Teri and I both know you're not screaming at anybody. You so sweet.
Y'all
You're not doing
that. Y'all don't know me like that. I'll be screaming at people.
Yeah, I have a tendency not to be screaming at people either. So, Brian, I like this. Communication is a lost art. We're surrounded by differing opinions, but real connection starts with listening, not just waiting to respond. There's so much in that.
Yep.
Assume good intent, ask thoughtful questions, and respond with kindness. And sometimes words aren't even necessary. A smile or a hug can be enough to remind someone they're not alone. When we embrace others, we help bring their broken pieces back together. Let's be the ones who spread warmth, one smile, one hug, one conversation at a time. And Brian also adds, hurt people hurt people. Well,
yeah.
I wish I were that nice. I wish I were that good.
Well, I don't think it's about being good or being nice. It's just about people's communication styles. Like, sorry, I thought that was a goose trying to come in the door. I do. They're back, and they were at the back door the other day. Some people will try to win someone over. Some people will try just to understand. Some people do put that foot forward and they're like, I'm just trying to understand what's happening here. And those are all beautiful, beautiful sentiments to do. However, sometimes there are going to be people who are just hell-bent on being angry and being venomous and wanting to trigger another person. And in those instances, you really have to know what your boundary is with the person. And if it's an absolute no, I'm not going there with you, then you can be very direct and you can say, it's unfortunate this conversation has taken this turn. I'm ending it now. and we can revisit it later if you're interested. And people sometimes will want to argue that, and other times, they'll say, yeah, I get it. I'm not in a good headspace right now, so I want to take a pause. And that's great. If you have the capacity because someone is hurt or has hurt you, and you have that capacity to hold that space and to have that conversation, absolutely do that. But you have to know who you're talking with, and also what your threshold is for the pushback in trying to have a conversation.
Yeah, that's really good. I was in, first of all, Elizabeth says, I will not try to win over people that have shown they are either incapable or unwilling to change. There's a great episode of The Golden Girls where Betty White's character, Rose Nyland, is trying to win over this guy. And every time she does, something horrible happens, like he gets in a car wreck or whatever, and he lost his cat. His cat passed away, so she went to the shelter and adopted him a new one, which he didn't want. And he comes to the door with the cat carrier, and he's got bandages everywhere. He said, "Here." He goes, "I just don't like you." That's a hard pill to swallow, especially if you come up, especially in the Southern people pleasing. I just don't like you. And what do you do when you run up against someone who's like that, and it hurts your feelings? You tried really hard. I wish I were the kind of person that didn't bother me. I wish that I was the kind of person who can read comments on Facebook that are said that are cruel and mean and not have them affect me. I can have 25 good, but I'll have one that is just cruel and mean. And it just, even if I delete it, it hurts my feelings. Where do you put that? Where do you put that?
Well, that's more of a needing to belong, a needing to be liked. It's more that's more rooted and anchored in our self-esteem. Like, I need people to like me. I need to be a part of people. I don't want people to not like me. Like, it's okay if people are indifferent, but then when people are like, I don't like you, then it's like, oh no, because then we become the pick me people, right? Like we're playing dodgeball in school. Pick me. I want to be on your team. And it's not necessary. So what happens is we get in this emotional tug of war with ourselves about bartering off our ability to have autonomy to say, it's okay if you don't like me. I mean, it's okay. People don't have to like. I mean, do you like everybody?
No.
Okay.
Not as a general rule, but I don't. I mean, the people I dislike, for the most part, I like most people. I mean, or there's something about them that I find interesting, even if they're quirky or odd. They're people I don't want to spend a whole lot of time with, but I don't dislike them. There's only a couple of people that hit my list of people I just go, I just don't like them. That's few and far between, but still, and for the most part, those people I don't even have to deal with. I don't,
But also we have to be mature enough to accept the fact that if someone doesn't like us, maybe they'll share what it is that they don't particularly like. Maybe it's something that was said or done or an action or something they overheard, and that offers opportunity for clarification. And then sometimes people just don't like you. That's less Christmas cards you got to send. You really just don't have to get into and I don't know how long I've been this way, but when I say I don't care, it's not meant from a flippant, like, I don't care. It's not that. I am not attached to who likes me and who doesn't like me. You know why?
Why?
Because at the end of the day, I absolutely adore myself. Now, that is not a place of ego. That's not like it's all about me. That's a place of I came into this world with a gift, with a purpose, with a whatever. And many times I didn't know what that was. But, you have to like yourself. And many, 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 many people don't like themselves. And it's not that they don't like themselves because they think they're a bad person. It's because when they were younger, they were imprinted with the message that they weren't good enough. They were too slow. They were too fast. They were too loud. They were too skinny. They were too tall. They were too smart. They were too stupid. They were too. And so then that erodes away at our natural born self-esteem that we have in order to like ourselves as an individual. And so when we anchor down in that and we don't acknowledge that we like or dislike, but that silent talk, like there's lots of people that can say, oh yeah, I love myself. I like myself. But what are we saying to ourselves when no one else is listening? How are we treating ourselves with our, financial, spiritual nourishment? How are we treating ourselves? Most of the time, not well. And so then we need to belong, and we want other people. Human beings are pack animals. So we want to belong. And if someone just outwardly and overtly doesn't want us to belong, then we feel like we're not good enough and we need to change something or figure out why. Because if we know the why, then we can change it. If it's something you've offended somebody about, sure, make amends to that, have that courageous conversation. But if it's just that they just don't like you because your hair is long and, silvering now, well, they can sit and spin. Like, okay, like that's a really silly reason not to like somebody, but hey, it's all right. So,
Hello, my cousin is watching us on YouTube, as is Michelle. This because I will go bump somebody on the head if they hurt your feelings. Remember, your Cajun family loves you. That is not the word he used, but Tim, I'm not going to say that word on the air. But I love you, Tim. Thank you for saying that. Elizabeth says, there are some people I just don't give two hoots if they like me or not. I don't care why. I'm neutral. Like I simply have no feelings about them one way or the other. They are non-factors in my life. Now that's, it's so good when someone can do that. But I like how you brought that back to, and it still goes back to stuff like people in our past that trigger us when someone reminds me of them. It's the same way when there's something within us that is askew, and we feel like we're the non-picked and we're the last person on the bench to get picked for dodgeball. I really love that analogy that you brought up. Because I think a lot of us in our world feel that way at any given time. And you can love yourself to pieces. And all of a sudden somebody can say one thing and all of a sudden your little comes out, and your little that didn't get picked for dodgeball or the beauty pageant or cheerleading or to say the verse at Vacation Bible School, whatever it is that it triggers within you that says you're not enough. How do you start building back the self-esteem? Because it's hard to think about dealing with difficult people starting in our root of self-esteem.
Well, asking yourself, what is I've come across a lot of people in life that are really upset that other people don't like them. But then when you actually look at that other person, they don't have the characteristics of a very kind person. They might be a famous person, They might be an intellectual person. They might be a rich person. They might be a successful person. But it doesn't mean that they're a nice human being. And so you have to look at why it's important to you for them to like you. Like, again, it goes back to that question, what are we getting out of it? If you're friends with somebody that's in the, music business and you want them to like you, then that means you by association are gleaning something off of their stardom, right? Do you need it? And if you need it, why do you need it? Right? Like looking at that to figure out where can you give your energy to build the relationships that are already nurtured and flourishing and solid in your life versus wanting to give away energy to polish and shine. This is something that I've said to actually 2 clients over the last couple of weeks. Wanting to fit in or wanting someone to change to like you. And then saying, well, I can change this about myself, or I can change this about myself, or giving them the ultimatum, I need you to do this and this and this. And then they do that, or you do that, and then they still don't like you. And so now they need you to do this and this and this. And the reality is they just don't like you. So it's unnecessary to try to jump through the hoops, have the conversation. If it's something that you want to know, if there's something that has happened that you want to know, have you offended someone and you want to make amends with that, have that courageous conversation and ask them, have I offended you? And if I have, when was that? And be willing to sit there, as Brian was saying, compassionately and hold that space and hear them out. Don't hear them when they say, well, that day that, I was walking in and you let the door shut in my face. And then automatically you're going, I did not let that door shut in their face. I did not. I mean, Susie was walking in before me. And I know, because now you're not hearing anything said.
Right.
And you know what? It doesn't matter if you let the door shut in their face or if Billy Bob Thornton let the door shut in their face. It does not matter. Just say, I am so sorry. I was not aware that had upset you. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Debbie Lingenfelter Carlene says, open and honesty is always the best policy. Do it in a respectful way. That's good.
And also understand that sometimes you're going to be open and you're going to be honest and you're going to be respectful and you're going to be met with boxing gloves that have been doused in flames or fuel and are set afire because someone is just so dysregulated, they are looking for a fight. So you have to know, I'm going into this with compassion, but also here's my end game. If they don't receive this from me, I'm not going to let myself get triggered and get into an argument. I'm just going to say, okay, well, we see things differently, and that is okay. We live in a world these days where seeing things differently isn't always okay. But it is okay because everyone has their own upbringing. Everyone has their own imprinting. Everyone has their own parental modeling. Everyone has their own life experiences. And that's what makes all of it such a smorgasbord.
You're right. You're right. Elizabeth says, I used to need approval and to be liked by people. It was getting sober, working my program, and becoming comfortable in my own skin that changed me, I think, for the better. I think that's, it always starts with what we do to improve ourselves. In a work situation, it can become bad, especially if you have someone in a higher position that has power to hire and fire. When they honestly are a very difficult person. And then you have to ask yourself the difficult questions. Do I leave a job I love because someone in power has become unmanageable? Or do I fight for someone to, to hear me? Do I fight for what's right in my thought process? A few years ago, I was working with someone who had a management technique who would belittle to keep you in your place because, and this was actually said to me on an exit meeting because I did eventually leave that particular job. Well, if I told you how valuable you were, you'd want more money. And I make it my policy as a manager to always keep people just at a place that down here, because if they actually realized how important they were, they'd want more money and I couldn't afford to keep them. And I said, well, that's just awful. I mean, it's just awful because most people would stay for less money. There's a study that was done. Most people would stay in a job for less money if they were treated with respect and kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, how do you deal with someone like that? Do you give up the job or do you turn in the person to HR? I mean, how do you can't win those people over because that's their management way.
Well, I think that having a conversation, because maybe in some cases people aren't aware that they are being so difficult. They just are oblivious to it because they're in their executive brain. They're not bringing in their emotional brain capacity into it. And when people work and operate just from their executive brain, they're very analytical, they're very logical, they're very black and white. Show me the bottom line. I don't need connection. We're not here to be friends. We're here to do a job. So sometimes bringing that to their attention they can massage in some more of the emotion stuff. Not so that everybody's sitting around, singing Kumbaya every Monday morning, but there can be some things brought in. Advocating for yourself, bringing that to their attention. We have an issue here. I'm just trying to get clarity on my end. If that doesn't work, then it may escalate to their supervisor or HR. If they don't have your backing, then you've got decisions to make. Do you want to sit there and keep putting yourself through something like that? Or do you want to look at other, sometimes I believe that's just the universe's way of going, it's time for you to exit. So just let's go ahead. There's a Xerox copy box over by the dumpster, get your stuff and not just that same day, unless you're really being taken advantage of at work.
Yeah. I didn't burn the house down that day, but I did leave in a day. I left in a day. It was like a moment that I just go, I'm done. And I look at some of those situations on how you handle it. And sometimes with people, you've got to go, I think I'm being treated badly. It's very generational too. I learned that the Gen Z or the Gen Zs and the Gen Xers, they will flat out tell you when you are overstepping, when you're interrupting their life work balance. They will say, no, this is my boundary. But my generation, people in their 60s, no, because I'm the first generation of women who, like, the whole gender worked full time mostly. I mean, the first ones, I would say the Equal Rights Amendment was passed during my generation, and women can buy houses during my generation. We're the generation that fought for some of those things. So I still think about, I'm so lucky to have a job because I'm a woman, and it's so hard to get a job if you're a woman. That's not the case anymore.
No.
But that's still my thinking. I think that's how someone had to point out when I was saying, well, this was this person, the way they did their management skill. And they said, you don't have to put up with that. And I said, well, I didn't know that then. I didn't know that somebody was breaking a rule. I didn't know that there was something even amiss from that.
Well, they are breaking a rule if it insults your soul.
Mm-hmm.
If it insults your soul, they're breaking a rule, whether they understand that rule or not. And that doesn't mean that they're doing it intentionally or they're doing it to hurt you. It just means you need to bring clarity around that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many people do you know that they cut you off when you're mid-sentence and they're like, oh, yeah. Well, and I know I saw, la, la, la. And when you're trying to tell them something about what's going on in your life that's important to you, and they're like, oh, yeah, no, that happened to me too. They're not doing that to be challenging, difficult people. They just don't know. They might not have been raised in a family of origin that was communicative.
Mm-hmm. And most of the time they're just trying, and that kind of statement, they're trying to connect with you.
Right.
I know that too. I feel that too. I've had that experience. I relate to you. And that's not always the best part of communication. That's not the kind of relating that needs to be done sometimes. Right. Sandy Moran joins us and says, my hardest thing to accept is that some people don't like you. They just use you. You think they are a great friend and they really aren't. Whoo, girl. Sandy, I think that everybody has dealt with that some way in their life. And whether it's a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, whether it's a friend situation, whether it's a work situation, there are people in this world who will use you for your circle of influence.
There's also family that will do that. We don't like to go there because it gets prickly when we talk about family doing it, but family does it. And a lot of times family will do that. Friends will do that because there is a sense of entitlement there where they are so secure in being told yes by you that they don't even question. They assume that it's always yes. And that's where it can get under your skin, where it's like, okay, this doesn't feel, I tell people all the time, take your gauge and, find out where the needle runs with how many times you reach out to a friend, or how many times you check in on somebody, or how many times whatever it is, check that needle. And if you are the one doing all the work, then you need to reevaluate that. Now, obviously, sometimes people are going through really hard things in life, and they're not, because they're in a deep pocket, they're not necessarily going to be, your biggest fan in the moment of their deepness. And that's understandable. But like what Sandy's talking about, if I'm hearing her correctly, like people that front to be your friend because they are benefiting something by being with you, even if they're not reciprocating a friend type thing. They're just using you. And that's a hard one to navigate. But also knowing, I don't care if they're family, friends, partner, whatever, knowing, again, going back to that, your value and your worth, knowing what that is will eliminate the need to want to continue those type of relationships. And I can this, when you pull away from that relationship, this is what you're going to hear. Well, I don't know what your problem is. I mean, you've just changed. I mean, I don't, you just changed. Changed. You're not like you used to be. Well, we're supposed to evolve. So there we have it.
Yeah. Sandy, I will say that sometimes as you get older, the older you get, the more you're able to discern when someone is using, if that's their motive. You start to see motives coming your direction. If there's an agenda, I mean, boy, I see it now like I didn't see when I was 20. I mean, when someone says, I just want to get my song played on the radio, I mean, I can see that before they say anything. If they want to get free work done, they want me to do something for them, or they want me to make an introduction. I know that now. I see it coming. So, hey, Leslie just joined us. Leslie Etheridge just joined us. Hi, Leslie. Good to have you. She said she's coming in late. She definitely wants to watch the replay. Well, I'm glad that you guys are here. We're going to be bringing things to a close. We're talking about dealing with difficult people. And there's several ways to deal with difficult people. And we've kind of just opened the conversation on it. And it starts with communication first. But the other thing is starting and finding out in your heart of hearts, some of the past things that might be clouding your relationships,
Yeah, I would say the first thing, aside from just starting with communication, the first thing is checking in with yourself to figure out what it is that you need out of a particular person or friendship and why.
Ooh, that's that Teriism. I always say, I remember when we first met, one of the hardest statements, well, what are you getting out of that? And it was a particularly bad relationship. And it was just awful, God awful. And you said, well, what are you getting out of that? Well, you're getting something or you wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Boy, I hated to hear that.
And we can say, we can say, I'm not getting anything out of it. I'm not getting anything out of it. But then we have to dive deeper.
Yeah.
If you are engaged, entangled in friendship, in relationship, in work relationship with someone that your soul just feels exhausted thinking about being around them, then you need to check on what it is you're gaining from it. Now, the brain always, the first thing people want to say is, well, I'm not gaining anything, because our brain thinks that, we're getting a reward, and reward should be good, right? Not all rewards are good. Someone that's addicted to heroin or alcohol, they crave the hit or the drink, and the reward of that is the high or the intoxication. That reward is not necessarily a good thing. but the brain receives that as the end game and what it's trying to get. And so asking yourself, you know, I've been friends with this person for 14 years and I don't understand, I don't understand why they don't like me. I've asked them to do this and I've asked them to do that and I've done this and I've done that and yada, yada, yada. And they still won't blah, 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 blah. Okay. Don't ask anymore. Don't.
Right.
It's not,
Elizabeth says, I almost always get something out of everything in my life. Even if I perceive it as a life negative, I gain something by hanging on. I gained a lot of sympathy by remaining a victim. Woo! That's big. The sympathy vote. Debbie says, heck yes, we change. We get fed up with being used. We're tired of the stress of a one-way relationship or friendship.
Absolutely. And when you get in that place and you're in that one way, then you have to, what happens with a lot of people is they get jaded to that. So then they want to start, well, I'll show them. And it's like, go be happy with life, because I can assure you, you're going to not wake up one day. So instead of sparring off and having to have the last word and trying to understand why somebody that's probably emotionally constipated doesn't like you, go live life. Do things that you enjoy and don't do them trying to show the other person. I'll show you. Who cares?
I've had people that have hung onto a job because of really funny things like, well, I get to work from home and I get to watch my stories in the background while I work, or I get to watch my shows. I didn't want to leave this job, even though they treat me horribly. I really love the view from this office. This office is really close to my house. Gosh, I have a lot of status with this job and I have an expense account. I don't want to leave that, but God, it's just the stress is awful. Some of those things you start looking at, what do you really get out of it? I was talking with two very beautiful, accomplished, incredibly talented women who are both in between jobs right now. And I was talking to them this week and I said, what is it you haven't done yet that's on your passion list? Literally, if you're not passionate about the job where you are, I always encourage, I said, look, if you're not going to find a job that you're passionate about, then find a job that you are passionate about and go do it, because that will pay you more than money. And a lot of people don't even understand that. But I watched Teri Pugh make a choice years ago. I remember the day you jumped off the big old diving board that went from a full-time, somebody else is paying the check and the benefits and all that, to do your passion job. And I have watched you walk in that decision and pick joy over all the other stuff. And it's been a beautiful thing to watch. It really has.
Well, I appreciate that. We all have that ability, we all reach crossroads in life. And I was doing this stuff nights and weekends and loving it, but also did not want to give up that day job, with the big organization that did all the retirement and 401k and the free turkey at Thanksgiving. And I'd always get the faux turkey, but we didn't want to give all that up. I used to love taking my lunch and walking around and, seeing it's no secret. I worked at Vanderbilt, so I'd walk around the campus and I loved it. Absolutely loved it, until it wasn't that I didn't love it. I just knew that my heart was telling me, you're supposed to be doing this. And the universe was saying, and if you do this, you've already proven that you want to do this, that you're capable of doing this. And if you do this, I'll have your back. But you have to make that step. And I've said this over and over and over, and I say it to clients all the time. I worked in a job where I was comfortable in my hammock, and the pillar of the institution in my mind, because I'm a visual person, was the palm trees. And I feared cutting my hammock loose because I feared I would plummet to the ground and everything would be lost. I mean, every fear went through my head that could possibly go through my head. What if I give all this up and, all my clients go away? What if this? What if that? What if? Guess what? I cut the hammock loose and it turned into the most amazing, magical flying carpet I have ever been on in my life. And yes, there are days that are challenging. But believing in your ability to do something that you know you're called to do,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if that is being a master gardener, if that is running a daycare, if that is an accountant, whatever it is that is calling to you, give yourself the opportunity to just answer the phone. Just answer.
Woo.
Answer. Listen to the, infomercial spiel, and then you don't have to jump right then. You don't have to cut all the cords, but just allow those things to come in and land on you. And if you are in check with your self-esteem, with your belief of that you can do anything, there's no reason why you can't, Now, I know that systemically there are things in place that do offer great challenges to people sometimes. So I'm not discarding that at all or discrediting that. But like when I have people come to me and I'll say, you can do anything. And the first thing they say to me, Devon, is, well, I can't be an astronaut, and I can't be a Victoria's Secrets model, and I can't be this, and I can't be that. And I just shut down real quick. Do you really want to be? Do you want to be an astronaut at 72 years old? Is that your dream? Do you want that? Well, no. Okay, well then why are we playing games? Like, why are you even mentioning that? And the reason that they're mentioning that is because it's easier to believe that we can't do it. The brain goes, I can't do that. That's too hard. It's easier to believe that you can't do it than it is to lean into the fact of, well, what would happen if I did go out on a limb and start baking that banana bread and sold it or whatever? There's enough space in the world for everybody to do what they love.
Amen.
And if you're giving of your heart and you're giving of your passion, you cannot help but be successful at it. Now, if you define success by brick and mortar, or you define success by money, then yes, you might find that you don't feel super successful, but success is not, I challenge people to lean into the notion that success is not measured by money. Our structure, we've heard it all our life. Money doesn't grow on trees. Well, I mean, money is paper, and paper comes from trees. So
look, one of our favorite people just checked in. Bill Sinkay, self-limiting thoughts. Yes, self-limiting thoughts.
Yes.
And Debbie Lingenfelder's going she's like, oh my gosh, yes, so good. And glad that jumping out of the security net was good for you. And Jill Pavel joins us today. So hi, Jill.
And Bill, we need to get you back on with us.
Yes, we do. Bill is out in California, and we were both talking about, we have some friends mutual friends and people that are out there that did not fare so well in the wildfires. Bill, I talked to him, and he was safe during the California wildfires, so we're glad of that. But man, self-limiting thoughts is something that we do a lot. I was talking to somebody, I said, well, what is your passion job? And they couldn't come up with one. I said, well, you just might need to take you a couple of days and just sit and contemplate life and figure out where your passion is. What is it? Something, I mean, I have a list that I wrote when I was in high school, and I've done everything on that list. Jordan Poole just joined us. Hi, Jordan.
But not everybody, here's the thing. It doesn't always have to be, that we have had horrific childhoods, and that's why we can't reach into this passion. Sometimes it's because we've been parentified. And so when we're young children, we're given a lot of responsibility. You know, maybe you're changing your sibling's diaper at the age of 6, or maybe you're helping mom or dad who's, you know, either overworked, overstressed, got dependency issues on something or bonding issues with something. You know, there's a lot of things that we as adults will beat ourselves up and go, oh, I've got these limiting beliefs, egads. But the reality is you don't know you have them because they've been woven into the fabric of your growing up your whole life. So it does take time to sit there and really figure that out. And for most people, that scale starts to tilt in their, it starts to tilt. They feel the vibration of the tilt in their mid 40s. They feel the tilt actually happening and they're like, what the heck is happening in their 50s? And by the time they hit their 60s, they're like, yeah, I think something's happening here because so we get to know ourselves. It's a beautiful thing, but you know, we have to be willing to hold that mirror up and look at it.
True that. Bill says, I would love to stop by. I'm in Florida right now with a loving spoonful. This is a man. Bill is the epitome of following your passion for life. I mean, you know, he does that. He's also a licensed hypnotherapist and he's amazing at what he does. And he just decided that's another thing. He said, but I've always liked to do this. So I did it. He wanted to do a television show. So he wrote a script and he sold the show and created this whole show. And then it's just one of those kind of people that says, okay, I haven't done this yet. I'm going to try this. And Lisa Richard joins us from Halifax, Canada. So good to have you guys join us. She's also somebody following her passion. She is a licensed chiropractor. And so nice. I will sing. And so now she's singing on stages and she's doing exactly what she's always wanted to do. You know, I mean, she's the kind of person who was riding a put together bicycle and ended up at the Canada Games. It's kind of like the precursor to the Olympics in Canada, you know, on the cycling thing. And the reason that she did is because she had to get places and she rode a bicycle because there's nobody to take her. And they said, who's that girl that rides the bicycle all the time? And she ended up on the sports team riding her bike. I mean, so there's hearts. Well, there's so many inspiring stories within this group. Thank you for joining us on launch date. I hope that there's something that you can take away and put in your little package of positivity for the week to kind of help boost you up. I hope you spend some time with yourself and find the part of you that you love. And Lisa said, I can't believe you remember that story. Well, I cannot forget that story because I think it's cool about you riding that bicycle to the Canada Games. But I'm going to turn things over to Teri. We join you every Wednesday, everybody.
That's right. And as always, we appreciate you coming in and choosing, because we all have choices. And so choosing to spend your time and your energy with us Wednesday evenings is a lovely, lovely thing. And if you have questions, comments, you want to hear other topics, you want to hear more about a certain topic, you know, reach out to myself or Devon or comment below and let us know, and we'll keep that train rolling. And if not, then we'll come up with something else, whatever Devon decides, because I usually don't know until we go live anyway. So there's always that. It's like impromptu kind of, you know, impromptu coaching and counseling kind of thing. So
we're getting a lot of things. Bill says he's flattered. Well, he already knows he's just one of my favorite people. And now he's one of Teri's favorite people too. So
yeah. So, and yes, I mean, please let us know, because we would love to have you back on, Bill, for sure. And until we see you guys next week, take care of yourself, challenge yourself when you feel like you just need to be right or you need somebody to like you or have that conversation. Challenge yourself in the quiet moment to ask yourself why. What's behind that? What's behind the reason that you are flipping yourself inside out and spinning yourself around to get someone to like you? Why do you have to prove yourself? What is that? You know, and when you dive deep enough, you'll have some pretty big aha moments. So while you're diving this week to next, take time to self-care, Take time to increase your awareness and also take time to increase your peace. See ya.